You are full of pains, don't leave me alone. Life's mystery unfolds with Quranul Kareem, a marvelous pearl for the best of mankind. A message for all, believe in one Allah. I commit you to memory, preserve you in my heart. Recite you out aloud in a pleasing tone. كتاب الحكمة، كتاب الهداية، كتاب السلام، كتاب الله. A book of guidance, a book of كتاب السلام، كتاب الله. A book of guidance, a book of wisdom, a book of peace, the book of Allah. كتاب الحكمة، كتاب الهداية، كتاب السلام.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. It is 15:40 and inshallah, as they say, third time lucky. Inshallah, the sound has been sorted out. Aziza Angamia, are you still with us? Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me on. Yeah, I was a bit worried for the sound.
Jazakallah for your patience. Much, much, much appreciated. Let's dive straight in because we've already lost a bit of time on the show. So from your counseling experience, Aziza, why do you believe mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, that relationship often becomes emotionally charged within the extended family system?
Okay, I think this mother-in-law, daughter-in-law issue is an age-old issue. And you know what? If our generation doesn't break the cycle, it will carry on for the next, I don't know how many years. So
Hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years, yeah. And I think it's not only exclusive to our Indian Muslim community. I think it's across the board. So
I agree with you. I've talked with very many people, and this is a problem. It's a global problem in all cultures, creeds, religions, and colors.
Definitely. Yeah, going to the situation, I think, at the start, at the get-go, if the people involved realize, especially the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, realize that this whole thing is not a competition. A mother has her role in her son's life, and then the wife comes in, she has a role. So they're both specific roles, and there's no overlapping of those roles. And what the needs she feels of her son are different to the needs a wife fulfills.
Aziza, what is your take on generational expectations? How much of this tension is actually rooted in generational expectations versus individual personality differences?
Okay, if we look at 30, 40, 50 years ago when our mothers were young brides, when a daughter-in-law came into the house, she was most of the time regarded as a slave, and she had to come in there and work. I mean, I'm putting it very, very crudely and very, very, just out there, because this was a situation. So when the daughter-in-law came in, she had to work. She had to listen to the mother-in-law, and many a times listen to the father-in-law as well. So she didn't really have a say. She had to just do what was expected of her. And very seldom, I'm not saying all the time, but very seldom did she have her husband's support, because the husband most of the time didn't want to come in between the wife and the parents. So she was left to fend for herself, and it made the situation in the home very difficult to bear. But if you look at our generation now, I think the mothers-in-law may be younger, their ideas are a bit different, they are more enlightened and educated, and I see a change coming about. Inshallah, over the years, a change will, it will get improved. And I see now the mothers-in-law are not so demanding, are not so imposing on the daughter-in-law. And also nowadays, you see the couples living on their own. In those days, it was just a given that you're going to live with your in-laws. And there was so
However, however, Aziza, like you rightly say, we don't really have many families or communities who are in the extended family systems. And we also know, alhamdulillah, that more girls these days, the majority of our girls are educated, meaning that they more independent. Also, that they aware of their rights, their responsibilities as well. So we've talked about the mother-in-law. What about the ultra-independent daughter-in-law, which also creates a problem in the family dynamics? Because I think her attitude is, I'm my own person, I'm independent, and I don't need, I won't necessarily follow your rules. I will live my life by my rules or the way things were done in my parents' home. So that brings a whole new dynamic to this relationship.
definitely, definitely. You know, because of this mother-in-law, daughter-in-law issue, many girls come into the marriage with the idea that the mother-in-law is the enemy. That,
True.
she must not impose on me. She must not interfere. She must not tell me what to do. Okay, our gene also has it that a wife needs to have her own quarters. She's not obliged to do anything for her in-laws. She's not obliged to cook for them or anything. But if you look at the flip side, it's your husband at the end of the day. These are his parents. So if you do it for the pleasure of Allah and for the pleasure of your husband, then your life is going to be much better. So there's stuff to be said to the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. If I can go back to the mother-in-law, if you like,
Sure.
welcome the daughter-in-law into the home. Treat her like you would treat your daughter. Don't cause trouble between the couple, because firstly, consider your son's happiness. If you cause trouble in that marriage, your son is going to suffer. And at the same time, to the daughter-in-law, don't, like I said earlier, don't regard your mother-in-law as the enemy. He's not most of the time. Don't always criticize your mother in front of your husband, because it's his mother.
Mm-hmm.
She brought him up. She gave birth to him. She brought him up. She nurtured him. And also, if you regard your in-laws as your parents, then you will be rewarded for it. And this goes a long way in building those bonds of relationship, for having a happy family life, for just happiness all around. So
Absolutely.
also going back to the independent daughter-in-law that you were talking about, many girls, like I say, come into the marriage with this whole idea that, I've got a career, I'm living my life, I don't need interference from the in-laws. But at the same time, some of them would come if they're invited, they would come empty-handed. They would just take some things for granted. So, you have to look at both sides. I'm not saying mother-in-law is always wrong. I'm not saying daughter-in-law is always wrong. In every family has their own dynamics. But if there's certain guidelines that they could follow that would make for a better environment in the home, there's always space to learn, and there's always something that we can gain from from these experiences.
So, Aziza, what are the most common complaints you hear from daughters-in-law, and what are the most common grievances expressed by the mothers-in-law?
Okay. Firstly, the daughters-in-law complain that the mothers-in-law are too controlling. They want to control whatever the son is doing, which filters down to what the daughter-in-law is doing. You know, let them live their lives. Don't be involved in everything. Don't want to know everything that they're doing in their lives. And also for the mothers-in-law, the mothers are clinging to their sons. And this is causing a big problem in the marriages because the mothers don't seem to be able to let go. We know it's your son, you gave birth to him, you brought him up, you nurtured him, but when he gets married, you need to let go a little bit so that he can live his own life. So that is the complaints of the daughter-in-law. The mothers-in-law also feel that, you know, the daughter-in-law comes into the home expecting certain things. They don't give that same consideration to the in-laws. You know, the mothers-in-law, they interfere too much. And which brings us also to the issue of the grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let the couple bring the children up the way they see fit and the way they have decided to bring the children up. Okay, I'm not saying you can't give advice and you can't guide them, but don't interfere at every point, you know,
Okay,
and
Aziza,
don't.
I'm going to make a comment there and then we're going to go for an ad break. Do you not
Okay.
think that sometimes mothers-in-law are so well-meaning that they give advice, but because the daughter-in-law has, you know, has an issue with the mother-in-law, because it's the mother-in-law saying it and not her own mother, she'll twist it out of context, and she won't view it as a concerned granny giving good advice. She'll twist it out of context and say that she's interfering in my life or in my children's lives. So that's something to, you know, also consider. And where does one draw the line? Where and how does the mother-in-law communicate to the daughter-in-law or to the son so that they realize that whatever advice is being given comes from a place of love and not a place of interference? But hold that thought. We're going for an ad break. When we come back, you can respond to it, please.
Okay.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
For the first time, I can dream again.
The Africa Muslims Agency Orphan Hope Program provides the food, clothing, and basic support needed by thousands of children across the world. Every child deserves a chance at a hopeful future.
For 50,000 trans, you can transform our lives with the AMA Orphan Hope Program.
Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Use the black seed, for indeed it is a cure for every disease except death." This Ramadan, honor that guidance. Tip Black Seed supports your blood sugar during fasting, boosts immunity, sustains your energy from suhoor to iftar. Available at leading pharmacies. Tip Black Seed, your golden drop every day.
Elite Basmati, available throughout the Middle East, and now for the very first time exclusive to South Africa, brought to you by Murchison Spice, Pietermaritzburg's most famous specialty store. Elite Basmati, available in aromatic white and golden cellar, is packaged in a world-class facility in India and is filled with wholesome goodness for your well-being. Elite Basmati rice by Murchison Spice. For trade inquiries, contact Mohammed on 033 387 2121. Murchison Spice.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. We have about 7 minutes more talk time with dear Aziza Angamia. She is a counselor at Islamic Careline, and we're talking about the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dynamic. So back to you, Aziza, and will you please respond to the question I put to you before the break?
Yeah, Sister Julie, you nailed it on the head. Really, you did. Because this is so true when a mother-in-law tries to guide or give advice or suggest something, and the daughter-in-law takes it in the wrong way. She regards it as interfering, or you know what, these are my children or my life. I will lead it the way I want to. And then at the same time, if her mother gave her the same advice or made the same suggestion, she would readily accept it. So this whole, you see, it's a whole mindset. It's a whole mindset.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's going to take a long time for these things to, you know, to come out of our lives and for things to be the way they should be. But again, I go back to that overlapping of the roles of a mother in a wife in the man's life. So
So,
yeah,
Aziza, in cases where there's ongoing interference or manipulation or perceived interference, what practical steps can couples take to protect their marriage, number one? And how about the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law? Do you believe that if they came in as a unit to Islamic Careline for some guidance and some counseling with a very open mind, that they'd be able to clear out all the stuff that's been plaguing them from the time this girl got married into the family? And of course, we must remember it's a two-way street. So she might have her perceptions about what she believes went wrong in the relationship, and mom-in-law too has her ideas about it. Do you think a session at Islamic Careline might just do the trick for mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law?
definitely, if both are open to it, I don't see why it can't help. And you know, they can't come to some sort of to a place where they can both agree on things and get along with one another. So as long as both are open to it, and all right, some of the stuff that's going to come out in the session may not be pleasant to hear. You know, maybe something that you did or something that you said, and the other person is going to bring that up. So it's not going to be pleasant to hear. But if you're going to be open-minded, I don't see why this process shouldn't work.
So let's take that scenario, Aziza. Let's assume the mom-in-law and daughter-in-law come in, and like you say, some hurtful things are going to be put on the table. What do you suggest in that scenario? Because you don't want it to be end up being a finger pointing thing, and accusations flying across the table, because that's not what a counseling session is all about. Do you believe that if the person takes, let's assume mom-in-law has complaints against the daughter-in-law, and if the daughter-in-law takes full responsibility and at that point perhaps apologizes and says she'll be mindful going forward, and vice versa, would you say that they'd be on a very, very good footing regarding their future relationship?
Definitely, because you see, a counseling session is supposed to be a safe space. Safe in the sense that if you get a marital couple, or in this case, if this scenario, we have a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, both the people in the session know and should feel free to say what they are feeling, what is hurting them, what they have experienced. So what we do in a counseling session is we give each person a turn to speak. But while that one person is speaking, we tell the other person not to interrupt, to either make mental notes or written notes to respond to what the person has said. So the person who's speaking can have their say, can like really talk without being interrupted or corrected. And this goes a long way in mending that relationship, because each person feels that they are being heard.
So, would
Yes.
this be achieved in one counseling session? And I presume it runs for an hour, or would you find it does differ from person to person or people to people, depending what the dynamics were at play in that particular family? It might not only be mom-in-law and daughter-in-law, it might be the other stuff happening in the background, going around in that family that is impacting on this relationship. So in that situation, I should imagine they'd have to come in a couple of times to get everything resolved.
Yes, that's very true, because it's very unlikely that it's going to be resolved in one session. Also, depending on the severity of the issues, on, and also the dynamics of the other family members, as you pointed out. So the chances are they'll need 2 or 3 sessions. And also it depends how open they are and how they want to see this process going forward. So,
Let's
like I said,
assume- I'm going to have to wrap up now, and I've got to really
Okay.
get this question in. I do apologize. Let's assume they've been for a couple of sessions and everything seems to be hunky-dory at that point. But a couple of months, weeks down the line, the same dynamics start playing out again. What do you suppose is going wrong, or what do you suppose went wrong regarding the counseling? Or is it about one of the people, either one of them, not being committed to the process?
Yeah, I think that would be the thing. If they feel that they've gained from the counseling sessions, and if they implement what was brought out there, what was pointed out by the counselor, and if they keep to that, they should have success in the relationship. But if one person is not committed, or is going back on their word and repeating the things that they said they would stop doing, or you know what I'm saying. So that could also cause a breakdown in that whole process. But also down the line, whether it's a month or 2 months, if they are experiencing those problems, they can always come back to the care line and have more counseling sessions.
Sure, because there's no such a thing as a perfect solution, is there?
No.
We human beings, we have, our nafs comes into the way of everything. So a couple of months down the line, like you say, things might go awry again. But if if they come back in again for a couple of more sessions, or a session or two, just to kind of air out everything, inshallah, they can get back on track.
Definitely. They just got to be commitment from all the parties, in order to have a better living relationship. And if that's what they truly want, then there's no reason why it shouldn't work.
Inshallah. We're wrapping up now. If we had more time to talk about this, I think it's so interesting and so relevant.
Yeah.
But closing, what would you like to leave us with?
Just for all the parties concerned, to say, to do for the pleasure of Allah. Sometimes you may not want to. You invited to your daughter-in-law, invited to your mother-in-law. You don't feel like going, but go for the pleasure of Allah and for the pleasure of your husband or your son, or whoever. Send gifts to one another. In our deen also says, send gifts, it improves relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Sometimes we have to put our nerves aside and just do, because that is what needs to be done. Not always going to be perfect, but if you want the happiness of your husband or your son, and you want your own happiness, you will take the steps to achieve that.
Aziza Angamia, I loved chatting with you today about the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dynamic. You are with Islamic Careline. And of course, if people are struggling in any of their relationships, you guys are just a phone call away. Would you like to give us the number, please?
Yes, it's 011 373
011 373.
Yes, 8080.
8080. Let me just repeat it once again, 011 373 8080. And, you
Yes.
know, if you're struggling with any one of your relationships, even if it's your boss that's giving you a hard time at work, or your sister-in-law, your mother-in-law, your daughter-in-law, or your husband, whatever relationship you're struggling with, these are the people to go to. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah so much for being with us on the show today. Till the next time, as always, keep us in your du'as, and salamu alaikum to you.
Ameen. Jazakallah for having me on. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
It is exactly 3 after 4 o'clock, and let's once again go for a break. When we come back, we'll be talking with Appa Farida Mokoni. She is an ustada, and she's also very involved and passionate about dawah.